Hi there, Dr. Maxwell. And I had a question about how to approach this last Knights and Knaves problem. And so on the spot, I really didn't feel like doing it, but after we ended our Zoom meeting, it really wasn't that hard to do, and it is kind of fun and distracting. So this is how I went through the thought process. I started with this first statement. So you says none of us is a knight. And so it's like this. You says none of us is a knight. Okay. So suppose you is telling the truth. Then what does that mean about you? You is a knight. And that's a contradiction, isn't it? So you is lying. And you is a knave. So this statement is not true. So we know a couple of things. We know one, you is a knave, and since this statement is not true, we know there is at least one knight. Okay, so we have U, V, W, X, Y, and Z to figure out. And we know U is a knave. And we know there's at least one knight. Okay, now V says at least 3 knights. W says at most 3. Those could be true at the same time. X says exactly 5. Y says exactly 2. And Z says exactly 1. So where do we begin? Well, um, at least 3. So what V says agrees with what X says. At most 3, what W says agrees with both Y and Z. Um, Now, if Z is telling the truth, then he's got to be the only knight. But exactly one of us is a knight. If that's true, so is what W says. So that means W is also telling the truth. And so Z cannot be speaking the truth. So let me run through that again. If we assume what Z says is true, exactly one of us is a knight, well, then what W says is also true. At most 3 agrees with exactly one of us. So then W is also a knight, and then Z is lying. So I know that Z has to be a knave. Okay, so now we know Z is a knave and U is a knave, and that leaves 1, 2, 3, 4 unknowns. So that immediately tells me that X is lying because there can't be exactly 5. So X is also a knave. Okay, now let's think about what Y says. If Y is telling the truth, if they're exactly 2, then V is lying, and W is speaking the truth. So let's see if that makes sense. Y says exactly 2 are knights. Could that be true? Well, um, if it is true, then so is what W says, and that does not lead to a contradiction. So maybe I think this guy is a knight, and this guy is a knight, and V would have to be lying because at least 3 disagrees with Y, so he is a knave. And now, if you go back through and double check, you will find that this does work out. And really, the whole while we're doing little proofs by contradiction in our head. We're assuming one thing is true, and if it leads to a contradiction, then we know it's not true. And in this case, it's either knave, knight, or knave. You see how that works? So, this is just a good exercise. It's kind of fun, and I encourage you to do it.